type tool in Photoshop. As I mentioned a moment ago, I don't think it has changed much. I'm demonstrating in CS3, but CS4 should be about the same. So you'll notice, let's start by looking at the type tool in the toolbox here. Okay, and let's hope that this doesn't crash. It shouldn't, but as soon as I clicked on T for type, there we go. There's a little tick mark underneath it, so that means we have a few other options here. We can type horizontally, we can type vertically. We can also type horizontal type as a mask, if you wish. When it types, I'll explain more about that in a minute, as well as vertical, okay? And you'll notice that when you select the type tool and you see the menu bar along the top, it gives you lots of options here. It tells us, okay, what we have selected at the moment is horizontal type, myriad Roman 24 point. We can change the font by clicking here, and whatever font is loaded on our computer will show up here. And you'll notice to the right there's a little preview of what that typeface looks like. Okay? So if I choose instead, I want Poplar, or I want Portugal TC, or let's look at Stencil. It's a nice one. And then depending on the font, if you recall from my lecture, it will let you know whether we have multiple versions loaded, whether it's regular, italic, bold, demi-bold, whatever. In this particular instance, notice that Stencil is only in the bold form, and that's it. It also gives us type size, which is at this moment, it should, when you launch Photoshop, it should be Myriad Pro regular at 12 point. Everybody remember how type is measured? Points and picas. There are 12 points to a pica, and there are how many picas to an inch, and how many points in an inch? Anybody remember? There's 6 picas in an inch. That means there's 72 points in an inch. And it also gives you the option of how you want to, the type of crispness you want to assign to the type. By default, sharp is fine. I honestly can't tell you the difference between sharp and crisp. The next is whether you want the type, as you're typing it, to be flush left, so that centered or flush right. We'll show you an example in a minute of how to use that. The other would be the color of the type. At the moment, the only way you can use type is with a solid color. You can also stroke the type, meaning that if you want the type to have an outline, you can do so. And there are some other type effects that are available over here as well. In addition to this type tool, or this panel, you can go to Window, and we can come down to Character and make that visible, if it wasn't visible already. This gives you let me close this up a little bit. I'm going to click that. Let me do this again. Let me close options here. I'll just leave it open. If yours isn't open all the way, there's lots of options that you have available to you here, both for character and for paragraph, and how to set those. As I told everybody in my Illustrator class, having these controls for type, and it wasn't until I think version 5 or 5.5 in Photoshop that we had all of these features. We had type, but they weren't as robust as Illustrator, and it's still not as robust as Illustrator, but they give us lots of options in here to tinker with the type. So those are the 3 different places. You select the tool over here, you can determine the font here, the type size, how you want it set, flush left, centered right, whatever. And we can do the same and a little bit more, or actually a lot more, when we have the character panel visible.
So for example, if I start with the type centered and stencil, I'm going to switch from that to maybe 48 points, so it's a nice size. And I'm going to click on the foreground color, and I'm going to make sure that it's black. I could have just as easily clicked here and selected black. Okay. I could have also clicked over here, and I get to the same place. I get my color picker. I can click in one of those three places. They all do the same thing. Then to begin to set the type, you click anywhere on the stage. It's not important that you're accurate where you click because you can always move it later. When you use the type tool, it automatically, and you'll notice it's down here with another set of tools, which are vector or object based, so that as soon as you click the type tool and begin to type, you'll notice that it adds its own layer. As soon as you deselect and you click type again, it adds its own layer, unless you select the same type and add or edit text to that. So as I type, watch how the name layer 1 changes. Okay, now if I'm happy with it, I can click the check box. If I don't want it and want to take it away, deselect it, say I made a mistake, I don't want type here after all, I can click this little deselect or no select box. I like it. I'm going to click OK. And as soon as I click OK, notice what it does. It puts the first handful of letter forms over here on my layer and lets me know that this type layer, it tells me it's a type layer with a little t, and it gives me the first number of letter forms, and it says this is a type demo. So if you're designing an ad, a one sheet, a poster or something, and you have lots of different type layers and you're wondering which one is which, it will always tell you in the layers panel the first several characters. It will give you the first several characters so that you can go in here and more easily select them. Okay? So now what can we do with the type now that we've created it here? A variety of things. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to show you some of the other settings. Remember I said you could type horizontally or vertically. If you're wondering when you would want to type vertically, and when you use the English language and you're designing for North America, Europe, my recommendation is that you don't use the vertical type all that much. Vertical type in the English language is really hard to read, and it looks like this. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. But now I'm going to select vertical and click in the middle. Now watch what it does. Oops, can't type either, so. Click the checkbox. Notice that they overlap, not a big deal. Use the move tool and I move it over. When you stack type like this in the English language, it is very hard to read, especially if you have large blocks of it. As far as I can tell, the only significant reason they have chosen to make this is that, you know what, Photoshop is available in other languages. It's available in Chinese, it's available in Hebrew, it's available in, you know, and when you use those symbols in those languages, type is stacked vertically, so it gives you those options. That's why that's there. There are rare instances when you want to stack this. So I warn you, I encourage you, however you want to take it, when you're designing, at least in my class, that you avoid doing it this way. If you wish to edit this, because it's already selected vertically, you would have to delete it and select the newer feature over here, or the different feature that you want it horizontal instead. I can't change this on the fly. I can come over here and I can take the layer and I can drag it in the trash and it's gone. If I decide later that I want to edit the type, change the size, change the font, change the color, do whatever, I simply select the text tool. I click and then I drag to highlight whichever letters I want to change. If I only want to change one letter form, I select one. If I want to change all of them, I select all of them. Okay. Now I can change, if I want to change the size,
there's a nice feature that Photoshop has that Illustrator does not have. Illustrator has a little up and down arrow to the left of the point size, and you can click up or you can click down. Illustrator doesn't, or Photoshop doesn't have that. It has a little t, big T. Notice that when I move the cursor over that little t, big T, there or here, that when I click and I drag to the left or to the right, I can increase or decrease the size on the fly, which makes it very nice when you're designing and you're not sure what type size you want to use, but you want to make sure that the type that you've created fits a specific area. You know, I can just drag to the right, drag to the left until it fits. And when I'm done, I can come back and you can see, oh, it's 68.01 point. So come back and let's round it off just to 68. Hit the return key, and you don't even see a visible change, but it is important that it's changed. That's one nice way to change the size. If I want each letter to be a different font, if I want it to be a different color, if I want it to be a different size, I can. For example, if I select just the first T and switch over here from stencil to Tahoma or Techno, notice that that one changes, the rest remain the same. If I want to change just the color, I select one or multiple letters and either click here, here, or over here and decide, okay, I'm going to make it red. You can type in with the color picker the hue, saturation, brightness, the RGB, color call out. If you want web safe colors, type in the hexadecimal number. If you want lab colors, or if you're designing for print, CMYK, and dial in whatever numbers you think it needs to be. And it changes just those, okay? So, let me go back. And now when I select all of it, notice that it's because I have multiple characters selected and there are differences in all of them. Notice that it no longer reads what font I have because there are multiple fonts that exist that are being used. If I want to switch and I decide I want everything Techno or Tahoma, now they've all changed. They go back. If I want to change the color for all, select them all and come back with, notice that color question mark, and I come back and I select the black and I click and it changes them all to black. Okay? So that's how you change those basic features. Okie doke, what do these other features do? Remember I said we have flush left, centered, flush right. As I type, everything builds from the center out. As long as I continue to type, there will not be an automatic line break. I have to hit the return key. So if I want to add a second line, and I type in here more type, and look at the overlap. They shouldn't do this automatically. What we will do if I select all of this and I switch from 18 to auto, look at how much space is between the lines. For a headline, the space between the descender and the cap or the ascender over here is just too much. It's too much space, at least from my taste in design. So how do we correct for that? How do we change that? Instead of using the 18, or instead of selecting, let me go ahead and select all again. And you can also click in here and hit Command A for select all. And we can go back and select auto. And with auto selected, I'm not sure how much leading they're using. But if I select it all, I can use the same feature that I did before. I can put in a specific number. Since this is 68 point, if I put in 68 here, it will be solid. That's what the term is used. You'll notice that the bottom of the ascender and the top of the cap, or the bottom of the descender and almost the top of the cap or the ascender, are almost touching one another. This looks more respectable. Okay? There's a good amount of type. If you are, again, uncertain and you want to be more flexible, highlight it and click over to the little icon to the left, here, or yeah, it has to be here. And now watch, when I drag to the right, it adds leading. When I drag to the left, it decreases. And if you want, they can actually overlap, and you can create some interesting, especially for headlines, some nice effects. All the type remains editable. You are not destroying any of it. Okay? Now also, what if you decide that, for example, maybe you feel there's too much space between the E and the T. And right now, we're hitting the space bar and we have a single space. But maybe you feel there's too much. Or maybe over between the T and the Y, you want the Y to be tucked underneath the T. So how do you make that change? That's what this tool does here. This is the tool that governs the kerning. Kerning, as you recall from my last lecture on type, covered, it's the basic, what you're doing is you're controlling the space between individual letter forms and or words. Well, again, this has the same tool. When I type in between here, I can click and drag to the right or to the left, or I can click here and I can just select 0 and leave it automatic. I can use some default settings on this button here, and if I want to make it closer together, -100. Notice how the Y is tucked underneath the crossbar of the T. Or if I want to set it wider, which is pretty rare with designers, I can go back and I can select from here and make it 100 so that it's actually wider between them. Okay, I'm going to go back to 0. What if I decide that I really want to make all of my type a little bit more compact? Or maybe I want both lines of type to spread and expand across the entire top of my ad. Then what that is called tracking, and we use this tool over here to do that. So again, you select the type that you want affected, and by default, it was on mine, it was set to 25. Let me set to 0, and notice that it sets it a little bit tighter. And again, I can use the spinner here to click and drag, and now look at, they overlap. And again, for some effects, this, it still reads, doesn't read well at all. What can I say? Let me select it all again. Let's, maybe we want to expand it and make it much wider. Let's go ahead and click, and we can expand it so that it fits the entire width. Okay, or we can click over here and we can type in specific numbers or use a number of presets. When you use 0, it's set to the default. So that's what these 4 tools do. Very useful, very powerful. The next set of tools, the next one down here, determines where the letter form is relative to the baseline. See the little line underneath that's visible? Underneath the type, that is the baseline. And you'll notice that the horizontal strokes rest right on it. Those with cursive or rounded strokes lie a little bit below it. If I want to raise it above or below, I select what I want. Let's say I want to make the Y jump up. I can select just that one. I can go ahead and use this tool here, and I can use the spinner again. And whoops, I didn't want to use that one. My mistake. It's this tool. Let this rise above. And notice how this one sits above. This now rises above. The baseline is way up here now. And it leaves all the others intact. So if you want to have your type jump up and down, like it looks like they're riding up and down, but they're all editable, you could select each individual letter form and you could change this feature right here to adjust the baseline. Let me go back and select it again, and I'm going to make it go back. Instead of 42 point, I'm going to go back and select 0 again, so it rests right on it. So that's what this one does. These above it, you need to be careful when you use them because they distort type. This one leaves the width alone, but it will increase or decrease the height. So watch, when I select this line of type, and we'll compare it to the line beneath it. Actually, I'm going to put the leading back to default, or to auto so you can see the difference here. And watch what happens. I'm going to select this line, and I'm going to use the spinners to increase this. And notice how the width stays the same, but I'm increasing the height. So if you're designing an ad, a poster, or one sheet of some sort, you have a specific area set aside for these words, these letter forms, and you have decided to use a specific font. But if you increase the size of the font, it increases the width as well. Well, maybe you have a specific width and height allotted to it. You have the flexibility now to adjust one dimension or the other. That's what this is allowing you to do. So now I can take this other line of type and I can change this as well. And notice that it stretches it out now or makes it more compact. I can stretch it out so the height remains constant, but the width changes. If you're not careful, though, it will really distort the letter forms, something that probably took a designer months to create the entire font, just a long, long time to do. And it will make them look kind of wonky. If it is, that's a technical term, by the way, wonky. So anyway, there are fonts available, and if you can find them or you have them, to buy condensed or extended fonts that have been designed with that in mind. They look either compressed or extended. You'll also notice some other tools down here as well. That what we can do is create a faux bold. You know, if you want this to look even more bold than it already is, we can click on that and it adds weight to it. Now notice this makes it totally unreadable. It was like putting ink on tissue paper and the thing just bled everywhere, and it removed all of the counters in here, all these little negative spaces. You can also create a faux italic. Sometimes that works. It's not really italic. We also have something here that if you want, we can select here all caps, and it turns it all into caps automatically. Another nice feature oftentimes in headlines and subheads is that you want to use small caps. It has a nice feel. When you're designing headlines in particular, it's not correct English or grammar to type or to use initial caps for every word in a sentence, but it will grab the viewer's attention. What you can do too to add kind of a pizzazz, a little bit of spice to add sometimes, is that you can use small caps. And watch what happens to the small letters. When I click this little tool right here, it turned these letters the small letters into small caps. And for headlines or subheads, that can be a very nice feature. That can look really, really nice in specific instances. These tools, superscript, subscript, when I click that, so when it's like 10 to the 4th power, or you want, you know, H2O, you know, if I type H, let's do that. Let's click over here. I type H2O. Okay, so this one, actually all these, I want to make sure I do this right. These are all caps. Actually, I don't want any of these selected. There we go. But this one I want to be a subscript. Okay, so all I have to do is select that one, and I click this right here, and it drops down. And again, if I feel that the 2 is a little bit too far away from the H, then I can go ahead and click in between. Go ahead and I can adjust by using the kerning. And then also if I feel the O now is a little bit too far away from the 2, select the cursor, put it between those 2 letter forms, and again, adjust the kerning, tighten it up a little bit, and that looks much better. Okay, all editable. You can also add underlines and strike throughs from here. Another especially nice feature, and that's what this is down here. It says English, USA English. Doesn't matter what language you're typing in, when you do a spell check, you can specify what language it's supposed to check the spell check in. And this is how it does that. I'm going to go ahead and hit return here again, and I'm going to type the word Montreal. Okay. Now, I'm going to select this and I'm going to change it from English USA to Canadian French. Notice I distinguish between French and French Canadian. You don't see any difference. Nothing happens. But as soon as I select the word and I go to Edit and I select Check Spelling, you'll notice here where it says Montreal, it'll say Not in Dictionary. Check it, and you'll notice that it has this one right here, the one with the accent grave over the E. Isn't it grave? Like U is to the left. So now if I check it and I say, yeah, go ahead and make the change, done, it added the accent. It detected a spelling mistake. So let's check this again. Now let's go back and switch from French to American English. You can do UK English or American English. And I'll do the spell check again. And I go to Edit, and we'll check spelling. And now it says, you know what, this accent over the E doesn't work. If I check this instead, and I click Go ahead and change, it will remove it. So the purpose of this too would be, oftentimes, and I checked French Canadian with a purpose in mind, is that oftentimes you'll be doing an ad, and not only will it be published in the United States, but it will be published in Canada as well. And if it goes to Montreal, Quebec, you know what? They speak French there. So you may have to do a separate version of it. Why create a whole other ad? All you have to do is take the same type, put it on another layer, write it in French, whatever language it is that you want, do the spell check on that, and you can have two ads in one. All you have to do is toggle on and off between layers when they're printing them out, and you have two separate ads. Okay, you don't need two separate documents. Okay. Same thing here, the sharp, crisp. There's some other nifty features too that we have. That with the type tool selected, and if I select this row of type, notice this one right here, this little icon. It says Create Warp Text. There's also a similar tool, almost identical tool in Illustrator, but it's not as robust as Illustrator's. When I click on this, a little dialog box appears, and it allows me to select from any number of features. And now notice what it does. It arcs all of it. Well, it's all part of the same group of text. So it's going to arc all of it. If I only wanted to affect the bottom line, then this is what I have to do, because I kept hitting return, return, return. It sees it as one block of text. Does that make sense to everybody? So let me cancel that. I'll go ahead and I'll cut this, and I will select the checkbox, and I'm going to click again, the cursor, and I'm going to paste. And now notice what it did. It now added this as a separate layer. So that these are two independent blocks of text now. So now when I select this text, and I apply this effect to it, whether it be an arc or whatever, I would encourage you to experiment with some of these. There's some pretty nifty features. Notice that it only affects that line of type. And it does distort the type, but it distorts it in such a way that it makes it more illustrative, something that looks a little bit more intentional. What's nice about these new effects tools or layer tools is that they're not permanent. They're not destructive to the type. If I want to go back and I want to say, you know what, I want another version of this and I want it in French Canadian, how do I do that? Or I want to change it altogether. I want to, change the word entirely. I go back and I click in here, highlight it, and we'll just say bulge. Notice by editing the type, it still applies the effect. I can change the color, change the font, do whatever I want, the effect is still applied. So it hasn't destroyed the type. When I click the checkbox and I look over to the layer for this type, you'll notice that there's a little arc underneath it, which indicates that that tool has been selected, or that effect has been selected. If you decide that you want later on to change that, highlight it again, bring up that tool, and then change from bulge to maybe wavy flag. So not only can you edit the font, the size, the color, whatever, you can edit the effect as well. That's not permanent. Very nice. It gives you a lot of flexibility. That is one benefit to using computers. There are many, but that is one that I've appreciated for a long time. You don't have to worry about making mistakes because that makes it very easy to correct them. Oftentimes it takes as long, if not longer, to create something than it would using traditional techniques. But the time it takes to edit, to make revisions, to make alternate versions is a fraction of the time that it would take using traditional techniques. That is the real advantage to using computers. Okay? There's other stuff that we can do too. We can also create, let's move this up in here. We can also, just as we can in Illustrator, we can have type follow a path. What you need to do first, though, is you need to create the path. So let's say we want the type to follow a circle. We can do that from down here. And we have the ellipse tool in the same group of tools that we have the text. What I would want to do up here, though, when you do that, make sure instead of shape that we select path and go ahead and click and drag and make your path. Okay? Now what you do is you select the type and you just click on the path, and notice how the icon changes when you move on top of it. And when as soon as I click, now when I type, let's go ahead and reduce the size of it a little bit from 68 down to maybe 24. Notice that as you type, it follows the path. That's a nice feature too. Okay? Other features with type. Very powerful tools. Let's move this up and over. Lost my train of thought. Train left the station, and what are we going to do? A couple more features that I wanted to show you. How type can be used as a mask, as a clipping mask. That is a very, very nice feature. Okay? So what if I want to have an image revealed behind this text? I want the image to be filled inside the text. How do you do that? Well, first we need to bring in the image, so let me go ahead and open it up. Let's go ahead and open an image. And I'm going to go back to the desktop. Oops. Let's find one of my images here. Let's open my Corvette image here. That's a good one. I used this the other day. And let's go ahead and drag the image into this file. And it happens to be on the top. Okay? What if I want this picture to be inside the word type demo? How do I do that? Okay, what I can do is make sure that the image is on the top. Make sure that whatever I want to, the type that I want to use as a clipping path is directly beneath it. Does everybody see that? You look puzzled. Okay. Move the cursor between the two layers. Hold down the Option key and notice how it changes. See the two overlapping circles? And as soon as I click, nothing happens because I goofed. Let me do that again. I messed up. Let me do this. I'm gonna use this here instead. I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna use it for the bulge. So let's move this over. Hold down the Option key and click. There we go. Notice how the image is revealed inside the text. If I choose to select the image and I move it about using the Move tool, notice how I can resize and I can move it. And the type now becomes a mask to to reveal what lies underneath it. And as well, this is editable. So if I want to come back with the text now and highlight the text, let's make sure that the word bulge is selected. And instead of bulge, let's type Corvette. Notice that the image is underneath. Pretty cool. And notice that in addition to that, we've added that bulge or that warped text feature as well. If you want to change the typeface, we can. Do we want to add additional features? We can also add a layer mask to this type, or a layer effect, I should say. What if we want to add a drop shadow to this? What if we want to add a glow, make the type look beveled? All sorts of things. Let's add a drop shadow. So I'll select the type. Down at the bottom here, we have effects. These are layer effects. Just as you can apply them to any layer, you can apply them to type layers as well. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to add the drop shadow. We have preview selected. I'm going to use the default angle of 120 degrees. Let's change the distance a little bit. Let's go ahead and adjust the spread. Let's adjust the size so it softens it. This is editable as well. I can change the color of the drop shadow, all sorts of things. This would be incredibly difficult to do any other way. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm thinking back, to the old days, BC, before computers, when I was doing this sort of thing. To think about doing something like this would just be mind-boggling. Now it becomes second nature. You'd have to have, as an airbrush illustrator, I'd have to come back and maybe hand letter this and maybe add the soft edges, airbrush those soft edges. It couldn't be done hardly any other way. You would have to have the stripper at the printers maybe create a mask so that the text becomes a window and reveals a photograph underneath, and they'd have to, through a long, arduous, tedious, a tedious process with film, create that mask so just the image is revealed in it. Very expensive, very time consuming. And once it was done, if you realized that there was a typo or you wanted to make changes, they'd have to start all over again. And now you can have multiple versions, change it on the fly, and not be worried about those kinds of mistakes. Very, very nice. Okay. The other thing that I want to show you is that what if instead of just big headlines, you want to create a block of text? Again, Illustrator does a better job, but Photoshop does a pretty good job. And with Photoshop, you're not going to create books. You're not going to create multiple page documents, generally one sheets, an ad, a poster, something of that nature. If it's a one sheet, just one page document, and you want to create a block of text, the way to do it is as follows. You select the text tool. Then if you wish, you can use guidelines. Does everybody know how to pull guidelines out of this? You need to have rulers visible. If you don't know what the key command is for rulers, it's Command R, or Apple R. And then what you're able to do is from each of these rulers, you're able to pull out little blue guidelines. And we can create all sorts of things and use these for alignment purposes. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to create a block like so. And let's say I want my text to fill just this area that's defined by these guidelines. Select the text tool, click and drag, and you'll notice a little marching ants. Release, and now you have a text box. And it will fill in the text box. So with the text tool selected, we can go back now and I'll select something a little bit more reasonable for text, like what am I going to use? How about Verdana? Verdana. Where is Verdana? It's up here. Verdana. And something a little bit more reasonable in size. 12 point would be good. And we're going to make it flush left. If you want more options, look under the paragraph tab, and we have flush left, centered, flush right. We also have 4 different versions of justified type, meaning no matter how much type you add, it's flush on the left, flush on the right. The only way it changes is the last line of text, whether it's flush left, centered, flush right, or flush or justified at the very last as well. So what I could do now is I'm just going to type some gibberish, and I have the wrong, let's make sure oh, I know what I did wrong. Let me undo. Let's go back here. Let's go back to character again. Auto 100. I want this to be 100% as well. I got to go back and make sure all my settings that I used from before are reset. 12. Metrics is fine. Let's just go to 0. This should be set to 0. Bold. Let me try again. Black should be selected for the color. What is it doing it? Oh, I know why. Never mind. Wrong. Let's go back here. Got to make sure I have the right layers selected. I'm not paying attention. Select the text tool. Click and drag. It was adding it to another text box. Oh, Kirk. Oh, no, Mr. Bill. It added this to the mask, so I'm going to throw this away. And I think if I turn that off, yeah, I blew it on a couple of occasions. I put it where the Corvette is being used as a mask, the image. So let me select the background layer so that when I click and I drag, it's totally separate and independent of those. There we go. Let's go back again. Change this to 12 point. Auto leading, auto kerning. Set it to Homa, again for Dana. No bold, just regular. Black type, as I said, under paragraph, flush left. And now I'll type, let's just start to type. There we go. Notice how it automatically wraps, and that meaning when it gets to the end of the box, it goes to the next line. What you can do if you wish is you make your text box, you bring in copy from Word or whatever word processing programs. It could be simple text, it could be Apple's program. You know, they use not, what is Apple's called? I can't think of it. Pages. And you just copy paste the text inside there. Okay. If you want to edit it, change your settings, click highlight, the same principles apply. What we can also do inside here is we can adjust from the left side, we can add space inside that box, and we can select space in here, and when we change it, nothing happens. Okay, what happened here? Let's go ahead. That's only 1.9 points. You're not going to notice that. So let's select all of this again. I'm going to select, how about 36 points, and hit the tab key. 36 points, tab key. Why isn't it changing over here? It's changing on the right. It's moving it over. It should do the same over here. Oh, wrong one. That's the first. I apologize. This is the space before the paragraph. Never mind. I meant to add it here before the left indent margin. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to move this. Let's make this 36 point again. There we go. So if you want the type within these borders to be pushed in, you don't want it to go all the way to the edge, we can control those features under the paragraph tabs here. And we have the last line. See if there's some other features in here too. That's pretty much it. Still missing some type features that would be nice. I think I have covered almost everything. Okay? With regard to the basics of type. And the little ad that you're going to do, the little wine bottle, and they do many of the same features in here that I've shown you today. Any questions about what I've done? Again, if you're unsure about terms pertaining to typography, go back to my video, type basics, and cover that so you understand how type is measured, nomenclature used in describing type, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's it. If you're ready to print your postcard, and I hope most of you are soon, print it. It is due. Need to get moving on to the next. And I think I specified in this week in class, I said that we're going to do a CD cover. We're going to do a DVD cover. So these are your options. You can make up a movie. You can redesign the cover of an existing movie, but you have to create or make your own photographs, meaning they can be from magazines and stuff, but do not use any of the photographs that they've used in the advertising of that movie. Okay, so you have those two options. One that's totally made up, one is a redesign of an existing movie. I'll talk about more on that Wednesday about the size. And one of the other things too is that all of the other little ancillary or the little details that are added, like in the design of DVD covers, CD covers, packaging, you name it. That's basically what it is. Or you're going to have to put in a barcode. Any logos that you would see, include all those little details. They don't have to be real, but they have to be incorporated in the design of the cover. And when you turn it in, the same as before, burn your file on a CD, put the CD inside a case, and when you print it, you're going to cut it out, you're going to put it inside a little case, and you're going to turn it in that way. Put it in a manila envelope, okay? So that'll be our next project. I'll talk about that in greater depth on Wednesday, okay? And show you samples of what other people have done. Okay, so you can get a feel for what the final product looks like. Okay, that's it. If you have exercises you want me to check off, please do that. If you want to print a project, we can do that. We're set to go.